Well, howdy, physics sleuths and inquisitive souls. Welcome to Dynamic Gravity. So, today I would like to talk about Nikola Tesla because he has been a thorn in my side for gravity for a long time. It's unfortunate. I mean, I love the guy. He's amazing. Don't get me wrong. Arguably one of the greatest minds of human history. But there's a lot of problems that come along with Nikola Tesla's and his legacy. For one, a lot of people look at all the accomplishments he's had and inflate that and assume that he actually accomplished more than he really did. And he accomplished a lot, man. I mean, he invented like radios, like motors. I mean, he did a lot of stuff. It was really insane and really, really important stuff that needed to happen for the evolution of science and human history. So he will always be the cornerstone of science. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But there's a lot of these things like, where people claim like, oh, he created a gravity machine and he turned it on and an entire building came crashing down and the government came in, seized all this stuff forever. No, dude. He never created a gravity machine. He never brought down a building. This never happened. Another thing I like to look at is actually not this, not yet. Anyways, I do apologize. We're going to look at that in a second. But all right, so here's another thing a lot of people like to go in deep on Nikola Tesla for us, like long-range wireless power. Like he teamed up with like, I don't know, J.P. Morgan back in the day, some rich millionaire, whatever. And, he wanted to, try and invent a way to distribute his AC power, amongst the city, and JP Morgan was all about it because if he succeeded, he'd have a monopoly and it'd be richer he already was. So, they built this huge Tesla coil, another thing Tesla invented. The man had a lot of stuff going for him. And I think this is an actual picture of it before it was taken down after the experiment. And what a Tesla coil does, it just creates a giant electric field that's very powerful. So powerful that, I mean, you can hold up a light bulb in it and the light bulb will light up because it's actually feeding power to the light bulb wirelessly, like remotely. Really cool, and really useful for a lot of things. But there's a problem. The fall off rate, I believe, is R squared, which means that it starts off really strong, and then as it goes out, it quickly weakens to very, very small, minuscule. So it's a failure as far as power distribution goes because it requires a ton of power to power a Tesla coil. And the range, even on this guy right here, this huge Tesla coil that you're looking at, which you can see is clearly like probably, 4 stories tall, 5 stories tall. Even this thing, if you're lucky, probably wouldn't even be able to power a light bulb 100 yards away. Just 100 yards away. And it probably wouldn't even be able to light up a light bulb that far away. And this thing's like 5 stories tall and probably using like tons of power. So, I mean, if you do the math, you quickly see how impossible it is to power an entire city like this. I mean, would it be cool? Hell yeah, it'd be cool. But the amount of power it would take would be astronomical. And then you'd have this huge electric potential, electric field surrounding you all the time, which, also is pretty dangerous, So, of course, J.P. Morgan, whoever it was, pulled the plug, and people are like, oh, it's because Tesla is going to provide free energy for the world, the whole world wirelessly to pull it from the ground. No, dude, this is just what I call Tesla syndrome, where people just lose their damn minds and think that he's more than he really was. I mean, he proved, yes, you can have wireless power. Yes, a Tesla coil can do that. but it's very limited and it's not very efficient. And those two things are not good when you're trying to realistically do, important, serious stuff. All right. So now that we've gone into Tesla syndrome a little bit, let's take a look at Tesla's theory of dynamic gravity. Now, you notice Tesla has a theory of dynamic gravity, and I have a theory of dynamic gravity. And the two theories are actually remarkably similar. It's actually kind of scary to me sometimes. I'm thinking, am I the reincarnation of Tesla? Like, what's going on, dude? What is this? But, when you quickly start looking into this stuff, you realize there's a lot of problems with this. Like here, it says, hey, dynamic, theory of gravity, which assumed a field of force. Okay, that's my theory too, which accounts for the motions of the bodies in space. All right, so gravity. Assumptions of this field of force dispense the concept of space curvature, saying, okay, this proves Einstein, which I think my theory does too. The ether has an indispensable function, and the phenomenon on universal gravity, inertial momentum, movement, and heavenly bodies, as well as atomic and molecular matter. Now, back in the day, they used to believe that there was no such thing as a void, as a vacuum, as empty space. They believed there was this substance called the ether. And let me see if I can go into this a little bit more for you. We're going to go into it. But, basically, there's a lot of people that have a lot of speculation when it comes to Tesla's theory of dynamic gravity. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of misquoted things. There's a lot of fake information, false information, people's personal opinions out there presented as Tesla's factual, opinion. It's pretty crazy. I mean, look at this. Like, this guy just goes off. Some elements of the theory may include, and he just goes off on a list on basically everything he can think of that's important to gravity. Electromagnetic fields all space-time. Magnetism energy is over time. Mediums consist of motion. Blah, 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 blah. It just goes on and on and on. Absence of mediums, there's no result in electrical forces. It's really crazy. Like, here's another thing, right? Here's a website dedicated to Tesla and a lot of this theory of dynamic gravity, all right? Dynamic gravity. And I'm not going to lie, Tesla coined the phrase dynamic gravity before I did. I did not know that when I named my theory dynamic gravity. When I first named my theory dynamic gravity decades ago, I actually called it bipolaristic gravity because it's based upon two poles. They're interacting in the way the electromagnetic force does, because it is essentially the electromagnetic force, or a part of it in a way. The full part of it. We only deal with half of it. We deal with electricity. So I believe anyways. But so I called it like bipolarization gravity or whatever it was. And, back like the first week I invented this. And then after about a couple of weeks of thinking about it, I'm like, yo, this name sucks, dude. This name, it explains it, but it sucks. It's ugly. It's repugnant. So I thought about, okay, what describes what's going on with my theory of gravity? That's a cool, catchy phrase. And I came up with dynamic gravity. And I did a quick search on Google at the time. This was decades ago. And of course, there really wasn't any results that came up. So I was like, cool, no one's thought of this name before. This is the perfect name for my theory of gravity. I'm going to use it. And I did. And then, after about 2 years, I saw a video of a guy who talked about Tesla's theory of dynamic gravity on YouTube. And I was like, shit, Tesla coined the name before I did. That's bullshit. I didn't know that. And so I looked into it, and then, there were a couple sources on the internet for whatever reason. Didn't pop up when I did my search. They were there. They just weren't crawled properly or whatever by Google. Who knows? But then more and more it kept popping up, a year after year, and it became apparent. People were never going to associate my theory, his name, correctly, dynamic gravity. They're always going to hear dynamic gravity, you think of Tesla's theory. But I'm okay with that, and I don't care. I like dynamic gravity, the name. I think it describes my theory perfectly, and I'm not going to give it up for anybody. I don't care. Hey, it's my theory. But I will say this. I do wonder if I invented this theory from scratch all by my lonesome, in spite of everybody around me telling me I was stupid and crazy and couldn't do it and was an idiot to try. I did it all by myself. And but when I look into Tesla's research, or what little information exists about his theory of gravity, and I do mean little, I do mean very little, I can't help but wonder, did I really invent dynamic gravity? Or did I just reinvent it 100 years after Nikola Tesla first thought of it? And he just didn't fully develop it because he was already kind of old and senile at the time. You know what I mean? He wasn't a young man when he thought of this. And so, excuse me, brain damage from the war. Apologies. So, I wonder, am I the first or am I the second? And either which way, I'm okay with either. If I'm the first human to ever think this thought, great, cool, more power to me, I'm awesome. If I'm the second and the first is Nikola Tesla, and you're going to sit there and say that, okay, man, you're on the exact same plane and level as Nikola Tesla, buddy. Cool. I'm cool with that too. I'm all right with that. But let's dig into this dynamic theory of gravity that Nikola Tesla has, and see how it compares to mine, and see what's really going on here. This is pretty radical stuff if you think about it. And this won't take long, I promise. So this is, I guess they claim, every website claims a little different story, a little different year, he's a little different older, whatever. And the words are written differently, but the overall statement is the same. A few years before he died, he said he had figured out how gravity really works and that Einstein was wrong. And that due to the way gravity worked, he coined it dynamic gravity. And that it was based upon the electromagnetic force. But and he says here, if we read some of this, I've worked out a theory of dynamic gravity. This is allegedly a quote from Nikola Tesla's letter that he wrote, handwritten statement. He was supposed to talk at some dinner or something, and said he gave a handwritten statement because I guess he was too old, 82 or something, to properly, I don't know, do it justice. But he worked out dynamic theory of gravity. And the details hope to give this world very soon. He never did. He never gave the details. This is the only known statement regarding Nikola Tesla's theory of dynamic gravity in existence of all the world, to my knowledge. Some people claim the government, took all the stuff and it was in there and they have it now and it's right and they don't want to release it because it's right. I don't believe this. I think that's bullshit. I think that's Tesla fever, Tesla syndrome, as I call it, whatever. But he did make this statement, apparently, and he claimed that he was going to release all the details to the world soon, but he never did. He died 5 years later. You would think in 5 freaking years, the man would have freaking released a paper briefly explaining what the hell he was talking about if he really was onto something, but he didn't. Whatever. Who are we to judge Nikola Tesla? The man is a giant among peons. It is what it is. So it explains the cause, force, and emotions, heavenly bodies. Okay, so gravity, blah blah blah. Idle speculation of false conceptions, curved space, according to relativists, space tendency, curvature owning an inherent property of physical celestial bodies. So it's basically Einstein's bullshit. Granting semblance, reality, a fantastic ideal, is very self-contrary. Every action is accompanied by an equilibrium reaction. Blah blah. It's Newton. Opposite those former, supposing that these bodies act upon the surrounding, cause curvature the same, appears to my simple mind that the curved spaces must react on the body, producing opposite effects, straightening the curves. So basically, he's saying, look, according to Newton, the true god of physics, not Einstein, Einstein's, how he says his math works, the reason why space-time being, depressed and curved and whatever, it's all bullshit. It doesn't work. It violates the law of conservation. And I agree with Nikola Tesla on this. I do agree 100%. This is actually fun fact about my theory of dynamic gravity. I spent like 10 years trying to figure this shit out. And it wasn't until I said to myself, you know what? Gravity absolutely has to adhere to the law of conservation. And once I said that out loud, and once I accepted that principle and built my theory around that principle, I had then worked out the entire theory of dynamic gravity within like 2 or 3 days. Literally. Like within, just from that one statement, it just all starts snowballing. Just, oh, well, it's got to be this, and it's got to be this, and this is the only thing that works, and it's got to be this, and nothing else fits, and the math's all screwed up. And it all came from that one thing, conservation of energy. So for Nikola Tesla to make this statement saying, listen, I know Einstein's wrong because he violates conservation of energy, that hits me in the heart, man. That really hits me because that's the only reason that I created my theory of gravity. It is what it is. So, and since action and reaction are coexistent, it follows supposed curvature of space-time, even if it existed, would not explain motions of bodies, only in existence of, for them, assumptions, dimensions, space, curvature, all literature on the subject is futile, destined for oblivion, blah, blah, blah. Nikola Tesla. Cool story. So we go to another one, and this is supposedly taken from like the same letter, and actually he had two statements. One was that dynamic gravity. The other one was something about energy and counter energy. I don't know. It seemed to me like it was just a reiteration of Newton's second law, but I don't know. But anyways, here they claim this is also a statement. And as you can see, I mean, it does have a lot of the same sentences in there, but it's written totally different. You could say, well, maybe that's different interpretation from the language. I don't know, man. I'm not a linguist. I don't know. All I know is that everybody says this is the statement Nikola Tesla made, and every time I read it, it's slightly different. It doesn't add up to me. But at the end of the day, what everyone claims we do know about Nikola Tesla's one-paragraph statement about his theory of dynamic gravity is that he trashed Einstein. He said Einstein was bullshit. He said he's got this new theory, dynamic gravity is going to release to the world. It's based upon the electromagnetic force, which my theory is as well. And his theory crucially uses the aether. And like I said, aether is what everybody used to believe was the medium of space itself back in the day. You can look even the master himself, Sir Isaac Newton, first published theories of gravitation, philosophy of naturalis, principia mathematica, based upon what he described planetary motion, theoretical law, pronouncing blah blah blah, mechanicism. Yeah, I mean, basically, even Isaac Newton believed in the ether. They all believed in it. They all believed that it had to be there or nothing could work. It was like the medium of which life, everything, the universe itself used to facilitate itself and to move things around, like particles, energy, mass, whatever. Well, they did an experiment, I don't know, 1860s, and they proved, by measuring this or that on the Earth as it, from 6 months apart from when this direction on the sun versus this direction of the sun. And they said, well, if there was an aether, we would measure different readings, but they didn't. They got the same. So they're like, there is no aether. We've proved there is no aether. They were trying to prove there was aether, and instead they proved there was no aether. So Nikola Tesla's theory of dynamic gravity is 100% not 100% correct, because he believed that it had to use aether to facilitate itself. And he obviously did not have any math at all. There's no way he could have. They didn't have any of the knowledge that we have now to build the math around like I did myself for my theory. So it is what it is. He definitely was on to the right path, I believe. He was on to my path. And I think he probably got pretty far enough to realize that gravity's interactions are dynamic, and that's why he called his theory dynamic gravity. So I do believe Tesla got this close from getting all the way there. I believe he got almost as close as I got before I had to figure out the math. Which is the hardest part of this theory. It took me like 10 years to figure this damn math out. It was so ridiculous. I'm not a mathematician. And, all I can say is, I believe Nikola Tesla's theory of dynamic gravity is very close to mine. But there were some gaping inconsistencies that make us say that, okay, although he figured out the majority of it, like maybe 70% of what was going on, there was still that 30% that completely eluded him, or he was completely unaware because no one knew about it at the time. And so, but I do believe Nikola Tesla, hey man, from what he says about his theory of dynamic gravity, he was on the right track, and he was the one that started the path. And even though I didn't even know about this at all when I created my theory of gravity, and when I named it such, afterwards, after the facts, it really hit me on how far he had to get. And don't think that when I'm trashing Nikola Tesla and all these guys, Sir Isaac Newton, for believing in the aether, that if they were wrong. If you look at it from a certain perspective, they weren't wrong. They were right. You might be asking, but you said they were wrong. They were wrong in the regards that they thought they were. But it was because they had a preconceived notion on how it would work, and that notion was wrong. But the ideology that they had on how everything had to facilitate, arguably, was correct. And if I just were to say to you, there's this magical thing that permeates all of space in itself, everywhere, even in the vacuum of the deepest, darkest hole in space you can find, it's there too. And, back in the day, they called it aether. And if I told you, but it's real, we know it's real. The only difference is today, we don't call it the aether. We call it the quantum foam. Or we call it the virtual particles. Like if you look, virtual particles, virtual photons, or whatever, exchange particles between electromagnetic interaction. The term is loosely, vaguely defined, so it can mean kind of this or that. But basically, this is how force is transmitted in the electromagnetic force, which my theory of gravity and Nikola Tesla's theory of gravity is based upon. It can't be nothing. There has to be something in between the proton and the electron that's doing work. It can't just be the two things separated and they magically come together. There has to be some intermediate. They were right about that. It's just the way they thought it worked was wrong. But in reality, if you look at it, the space itself is filled to the brim with virtual particles exchanging this force and that force on this and that, a positive and negative entity of the electromagnetic force and gravity itself. and essentially it's a quantum foam. Then, and if you just rename that to the aether, now pretty much everything Nikola Tesla said is true on what his little paragraph statement of dynamic gravity is, on how I've worked it out anyways. It's all 100% accurate. And this is why I think I'm not the first person to create dynamic gravity. I am the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla, and I just reinvented it. I know, right? It's crazy. It blows my mind away when I think about it like that, but I think that's the way it is. But there's a huge difference. Number one, Nikola Tesla never published anything. He never told anybody. He never shared it with anybody. So how far he'd actually gone down this rabbit hole is extremely, extremely open for debate. Me, however, I have worked out the math. I can calculate. I can tell you how many newtons, based upon this assumption or that assumption, force are being exchanged between for dark energy or dark matter. I have worked it all out on my math, and I have all this. I'm starting now in all my videos. I'm going to put a link to a paper that I wrote that I'm very proud of. I think if you read this paper and the description of this video and all my videos from now on, it explains beautifully what the hell dynamic gravity is, how it works, how the math came to be. I derived the math. That's my next video. I'm going to show you a derivation of my math so you can see that I didn't just make this shit up from nowhere. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I kind of did. But it all worked out so perfectly. And I was like, there's got to be something to this. So I went to derive it. And sure enough, when I derived it, it came out to be exactly what I thought it had to be the whole time, a ratio number. And I'll explain that later in my next video. But yeah, so I think this video has gone on long enough. I would just like to say, I got nothing but love and respect from Nikola Tesla. He is a true OG of dynamic gravity. I am just picking up the pieces that were shattered upon his death and putting them back together and gluing them back together and, pushing that forward, with the math and the full-fledged theory that I feel he got half of. I feel he got half of that theory right. But there's the other half that eluded him because it was just beyond his time. And I'm fortunate that I live in the time where we have enough information available. I was able to get enough pieces of the puzzle together to fit them together to see enough of the picture to figure out what the hell's going on. Will mainstream science ever take this seriously? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. It's unfortunate. I wish I could publish and get peer-reviewed, but I can't. I'm not an academia. I don't have an academic email. They won't let me. I've tried. They refuse to allow my publication. They will not do it. This is science. It sucks. It's political. It is what it is, though. But on that note, I take a sip to OG Nikola Tesla, and I hope you will too. And I hope this video explains to you why we both have the same name, dynamic gravity, and why even though it's accidental, it's almost destiny. I'm going to leave it there. Have a good one. Hit you on the flip side, guys.
Like, subscribe, submit.